Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm good, Steph. How are you doing?
Doing well. Long time no talk. Welcome to Launch Week 13.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. The first thing I would love for you to do is to just introduce yourself to our audience and talk a little bit about who you are and what you do at AppSpace.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Steve Gray. I am the Senior Director of Partnerships at AppSpace. Been here for 10 years. And I was in the front end of building out our partner ecosystem and get to work with all of our resellers, technologies, and alliance partners globally that helps all of our mutual customers build and manage an impactful workplace. So glad to be here and glad to be speaking.
Yeah, glad to have you. I would love to kind of start about just kind of talking about how organizations they already have their collaboration tools, they have their room tech, they have their workplace apps in place already. So, where in your opinion is the experience still breaking down for employees?
Yeah, great question. So it really isn't about a lack of technology. It's really about a lack of cohesion and connectivity. Most organizations, look, they bought technology in silos from different stakeholders, from facilities to IT to communications. And at the end of the day, they wound up with a bunch of bespoke siloed systems, whether that's internet, a digital signage system, a desk booking system, a visitor management system, a room scheduling system. And we're working with customers with 10 to 12 systems and sometimes even overlapping systems within those systems. So at the end of the day, I mean, these tools don't talk to each other, and the employees are in the middle of all this, and it leads to a disconnected, disjointed employee experience.
Absolutely. If so, when these tools are not connected, where, in your opinion, and where are you seeing people feel that most, that disconnect in their day to day experiences?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it really impacts productivity, and it also impacts company culture as well. So you think about employees, they're going to multiple apps to see who's in the office, to issue a visitor pass, to find a desk, to find a room, to get the latest communication. And that's just all the front end. When they go on, when they get to the office, a lot of times it's a series of other disjointed experiences as well, which leads to a really frustrating experience for the employee.
If you had to pick like one or two or three small moments in someone's day experience, like if we follow an employee through their day at the office, where are the biggest moments that create the most friction there in employee experience and productivity?
Yeah, so really it's the sum of the parts that kill productivity. So you think about when an employee wakes up and begins their journey for the day, that begins right there and then. So at the end of the day, when they're thinking about going to the office or even just receiving communication in the moment, they don't want to go to multiple places looking for communication and hoping it's updated. And they're not just going to the office. At the end of the day, they want to know who's in the office. They want to know that that they have the conference room that they need to be successful for that meeting. It has the right equipment. They want to know that their desk that they need is there. It's near their team. So they want to know what their day is going to look like before they get to the office. So really it begins there. And then when they get to the office, there's a lot of examples there. And I'll just use one, the ghost meeting. An employee's at the office and they walk past a conference room that says occupied on the screen, but it's completely empty because the sensor didn't talk to the scheduling software to release the room. Really it's information lag. Standing in the lobby waiting for a guest, looking at a digital display that has outdated information that didn't match the company news that you saw in your Teams app or on your email or on the internet that morning. So it's really the sum of all these parts that it drives a lack of confidence to the employee that they're getting the latest information. It also leads to a tremendous amount of frustration around what to expect when they get to the office. So a lot of them just aren't really going to the office because of that.
That makes a lot of sense. So, when organizations start connecting these tools more intentionally, where are you seeing that actually change for employees?
Yeah, really the shift moves from searching to surfacing in a connected workplace. So the information finds them. So when your tools are intentional, your room booking automatically triggers a lighting in AV, or check-in at the front desk, notifies your host and assigns a locker nearby, and the digital signage throughout the building becomes a personalized concierge. What changes is really certainty. Employees feel confident the space is ready for them, which makes the office a destination they actually want to visit, not a place they're required to be.
Makes a lot of sense. And I know I have a few more questions of my own, but I'm going to go ahead and just remind the audience that if they have any questions for Steve while we have him, go ahead and put those again in the area to the right of our heads, and I will take them and make sure I ask them while we have him. But this is another big question that I have, and this is like where you're seeing the biggest disconnect between how these systems are designed and how people actually use them.
Yeah, great question. Really, the biggest disconnect is designing from features instead of friction. Engineers and IT teams often design for the power of a user, the person who wants to customize every setting. But in reality, employees are casual users who are usually in a hurry. So if a piece of tech requires a manual or more of 2 taps to work, people will find a workaround, which usually means they stop using the tech entirely. So we see a huge gap where high-end room tech sits idle because it's intimidating. So at AppSpace, we believe the technology the best kind of technology is the kind that disappears in the background of a productive day.
That makes a lot of sense. I do think that a lot of people here in AV like to design the tech as if they are going to be the ones using it, and
Yeah.
that's not who's using it. So if someone wants to start improving this without overhauling every single thing, because let's be honest, we don't always have the budget for that to overhaul their entire system, but if they want to just start taking some steps to improve their systems and start connecting things a little bit better, what is one area you think they should focus on first?
Yeah, I think actually putting the employee first. I go back to what I talked about in the beginning. People a lot of times bought in different silos and groups, and they bought for specific reasons. And really the workplace has changed and the needs have changed. So I think about the user first. Like, what are you going to have that connects the user, the employee, to the on-site experiences that you're connecting them to? So I would think about it from that lens, and what's going to create a cohesive, connected employee experience.
Absolutely. So, are you seeing that organizations are thinking a little bit differently about workplace experience now that we are in this area of like post COVID, everyone's coming back to the office? Are we seeing that they're starting to think about it a little bit differently beyond just digital signage?
Absolutely. Like we're living in a really great time right now. It's a lot of workplace transformation. I think when people bought during COVID, everyone thought the office was going to look the same when the pandemic ended, right? And it doesn't. At the end of the day, the new normal is people work from anywhere and everywhere, and it's been that way for a while. So we're seeing a lot of organizations realize they got to future-proof their technology, and they got to buy today for around the employees, centered around them for what's going to connect them and make this frictionless. Really at AppSpace, the way we look at it is employees expect a consumerized experience that's going to help them thrive in the workplace. So that's the conversations we're having with our customers, is putting the employee first.
That's interesting. I'd love if you could talk a little bit more about what a consumerized experience means to you.
Yeah, great question. At the end, it needs to be familiar and intuitive for the employee. So if they have to go to 4 to 5 apps for all the different experience that is talked about, they're going to give up and be frustrated. So what we see be successful is having one app that connects to, or really bridges the gap between the digital and physical workplace and connects to those on-site systems. So I'd say for most organizations, the hardware they have in place specifically, and often the systems powering those, whether it's Google or Microsoft, those still stay intact. But using an app like AppSpace to be able to connect into the technology stack that's your standards and that you already use, but making that easy and intuitive for employees to go to one place to get all of their workplace communication and to manage all of their workplace management needs as well.
Do you have an example off the top of your mind of an organization successfully connecting these tools and what it did for them?
Yeah, I got a lot of them.
Perfect.
How long have you got, Steph? No, a great one I like to use, and look, the way I like to think about it is, I'll give an example of a Fortune 100 company, but really we can right size this because we're seeing companies with 500 employees have the same needs as a company with 50,000 employees. nothing changes around your tech stack. It just changes around the scale that you're deploying this at. So there was a Fortune 100 company that had really a couple of initiatives. One's to build the healthiest workplace in the world, and the other is to build the best workplace experience in the world. So we were really helpful for that. They were using AppSpace for digital signage for years, and we were the standard for how they put up communication around their offices globally. And they approached us and said, hey, how can we do this better? And so what we helped them is using our app for employees to use to find communication, so using the AppSpace internet, and for the corporate communications and HR team, that made it really simple to create, schedule, and publish content one time and get everywhere. And how that matters to the employee is if the operators, in this case HR and Corp Comms, were going, if it was easy for them to get content, keep it up to date, that meant when the employees went to the internet or they went to the office to look at signage, it was always up to date. Those go hand in hand. And I think, for facilities and IT teams, that meant having that same app to be able to find and book spaces going back to the office, because that was part of the workplace experience. And with some of the integrations we had built into workplace sensors, being able to show the health of the building. That's really important to employees and employers alike. So employees knew with confidence when they were booking a room on the app that room, was healthy. It was a healthy place to be. If they got to the office and maybe the CO2 levels were high, that room would go out of commission, or they could use the room scheduling panel to find and book a different room because those systems were connected. So at the end of the day, we help them to deliver on a high-level workplace experience and also a very healthy workplace.
Absolutely. And do companies ever run into any challenges or growing pains when they're initially trying to connect these systems? And how do you guys help them overcome them?
Yeah, great question. I go back to most of the time when we're talking to organizations, unless they have really outdated hardware, the nice thing is the infrastructure is typically in place. And I always say you don't know what you don't know. And most of the organizations, they bought all these siloed solutions, partly because you had different buying groups. You had facilities buying workplace management solutions. You had corporate communications buying employee communication solutions. And in the end, you had IT kind of stuck in the middle of all of that. So really what we're helpful is doing an assessment of what they have and being consultative on what we can connect into and how they can leverage what they already have today, but just make it better. And then you think of it from the stakeholder perspective, that drives a lot of operational efficiency for them. That's less systems. I go back to the Fortune 100 company I just talked about. They had 12 different systems, Steph, that they were managing to deliver on all this. That's really expensive. It's really cumbersome. Mm-hmm. And the common theme here is that led to a really disjointed employee experience as well.
Absolutely. Would you say that like a really good first step in terms of trying to link the multiple systems and things that a lot of us are using, would you say that like a really good one would be linking their meeting room technology with their workplace communication?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, it's not always a one size fits all. We're seeing a lot of organizations, they're forming workplace teams. So our job's really easy when they've got communications, facilities, and IT in the same room. And we're seeing that more and more. Organizations are getting smarter because they don't want to continue buying technologies that people don't use. And so, for us, it's being consultative and trying to get people in the room and advising them on best practice. So sometimes we find that organizations that maybe it's communications is the biggest thing in front of them, and we can go help with that. Or maybe on the flip side of that, it's the workplace management team talking about updating how people find and book spaces, going to office for room scheduling and desk management and visitor management. So this can live independent of each other, but really best practice. And what we see over time is organizations getting a vision and thinking about the workplace holistically and not just solving specific problems.
Wonderful. And I know that we've got a couple minutes here, so I wanted to give you some time to talk a little bit more about AppSpace and how you guys can help for those who are watching.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. So thanks for joining. And you look, at the end of the day, I think this is about having a conversation. So the best way we can help is, talking to you, the customers, and around how you're currently doing this and doing an inventory of how are you managing these different elements today? And getting people in a room and talking about this and thinking about best practice and also aligning that to what your goals are as well. So I think it's pretty simple. Really it's just about having a conversation and taking an assessment of what you're doing today and what you're trying to accomplish and marrying those two together.
Wonderful. And very last question I have for you, where can people find you online?
Yeah, thanks for asking. You can always find us at appspace.com. Me personally, I'm at sgray, Gray, at appspace.com, and I would love to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve, for being part of Launch Week 13.
Hey, Steph, thanks for having me.